It's Tell It Like It Is Tuesday on the Buddy Martin Show. I'm your host, Lauren Meadows. We look at the continued state of the Florida Gators with the Gainesville Suns' David Whitley and Rob Brown from SEC Sidelines. Like and subscribe below, and let's get it started on the Buddy Martin Show.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good evening and welcome to the Buddy Martin Show. I'm your host, Lauren Meadows, and here with Brendan Martin and David Whitley from the Gainesville Sun. The Florida Gators kind of took on a national flair as Paul Finebaum and Desmond Howard as well weighed in on what the state of the Florida program is. Some controversial but maybe over-exaggerated comments by Billy Napier. We're going to dive right into them with the Gainesville Sun's David Whitley. How you doing this evening, David?
Better than a lot of people in Gainesville.
Yeah. It was, we both were at the press conference on Monday, and, it's interesting. Obviously it was Labor Day, so I had some time on my hands, and I want to make sure that I made it over to the Hefner Center, just like yourself, to kind of see what the aftermath was. In Saturday's press conference, Coach Napier kind of expressed, hey, let me take a look at it. We'll look at it on film. Obviously recognized how embarrassing the loss was, how poor the team played, how bad they looked. But after that view and looking at the tape, it's kind of like we're kind of still here, and the boo birds are out. And then we had the comment. And, what I would probably term as a generalization of just the state of, everybody has an opinion. Everybody thinks they're the expert. We do that on this show here, but you were there as well, David. So what was your thoughts on the press conference and what you observed, what you heard, and just where the state of the football team is right now? Basically, listening to Coach Napier and the select players that we had yesterday.
I thought that it went pretty much as expected. He went up there and said, yeah, we got work to do, blah, blah, blah. And the first question in everybody's mind was, of course, Mertz. And he quickly sort of quieted that, saying they're not going to discuss injuries till Wednesday because of trying to get their injury report situation down from Wednesday through the SEC, which has a new rule on debating it. But even if that wasn't an issue, fact is nobody knows if Mertz is going to be ready to play. I doubt, because he's in, concussion protocol, which is, everybody, it's almost become everybody knows what it means. 5 of you go, what is protocol? Now, it's a very specific set of benchmarks that a guy has to meet before he can even, start practicing, blah, blah, blah. And, based on what, even though every concussion is different, it's rare that a guy who's in concussion protocol is back the next week. They usually err on the side of caution, it seems like. So I would be very surprised if Mertz is there. But anyway, so he cleared that up, and then we moved along, and it was going pretty much as expected. And then he gets to those words that you mentioned, and the minute he said it, I almost want to go. I said, he has inadvertently stepped in it because of there, and I call it, because I'm going to write a column on this. I call it Napier derangement syndrome right now.
Explain that to us, sir.
Well, is that NDS?
Yes.
Yeah.
Enlighten us Enlighten us, doctor.
Yeah. The actual origin was, I don't know if people know, there was a famous political commentator, Charles Krauthammer, for the Washington Post, quite prominent. In 2003, he coined the phrase Bush derangement syndrome for George Bush, and Krauthammer was also a trained psychiatrist. So he was a smart guy, and he knew what he was talking about when it comes to mental conditions. And at that point, I mean, he was also a conservative. So he said, it's the kind of thing where anything Bush does, it doesn't matter. The other side is going to react hysterically and with paranoia, thinking that and think the worst of it. And Bush could have come out at that point and said, "I'm giving $10,000 to every American, and I'm ending the war in Iraq." But he would have been ripped for anything, and it became sort of a thing because then they became an Obama derangement syndrome, where everything he said, the conservatives would think, "Oh, he's got an ulterior motive. Don't trust this guy," And then it became now Trump derangement syndrome has been a big thing, where no matter what he does, 47% of Americans still think he's Hitler, regardless. I mean, he could cure cancer. So he's working an angle somewhere. Right. So really rational thought is out the window. Now I call it Napier derangement syndrome because anything he says or does, if it can be slightly misconstrued, it will be, or taken in the most negative aspect. Now, it's not fair, but I think it is fair because he's put himself in this position. Mm-hmm. And for it to be really unfair, it would be to expect fans to be rational. They've never been rational. That's why they're fans. Correct. They're going to overreact to this stuff and interpret these things in the worst possible way. They're mad, and rightfully so. And he's been smart enough and also just honest enough to say from second, third thing out of his mouth was, we after Saturday's game was, this is embarrassing. We're embarrassed. Blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. He fell on the sword. He did everything except show up in sackcloth and ashes and say, we saw. I mean, he made. I mean, over no excuses, but he said everything he should say. And it's like anytime anybody screws up or the best thing they can do is fall on the sword and admit it. Worst thing is to say, make excuses. So he made no excuse, and he wasn't Saturday. I mean, Monday? Yes.
Yeah.
And of the 24 minutes of just usual, stuff, routine. We're sorry, we got to get better. Blah blah blah. That was about 12 seconds of it where he drifted off, and he was answering a question about how do you withstand the noise and keep kids focused, and it was really like he answered 2 or 3 of those questions. He was actually going back referring to a previous question that I think Edgar Thompson had asked about, because Edgar said, how do you keep all this stuff out? And he said, well, you just gotta, we're working on what we can do, blah blah blah, and we can't worry about what some guy in a basement in Central Florida is saying, but the thing is, that's what you saw on the YouTube clip, the X clip, which got 1 million views. It cut off right there. His next sentence was, I don't know the purveyor. We deserve to be criticized. There's a reason for it. So, right. It was in a way taken out of context. But to expect better would be to expect this fairness in this whole thing. And fairness, fairness ain't got nothing to do with this anymore.
Right. Yeah. Well.
People are just pissed.
Yeah, I think that, and I hear you, and I'm with you too. And this is something I want to put to bed after this next kind of point we're making is, it's one thing for it to be said to local media like ourselves and things like that. But I was kind of shocked, and you tell me as well, if at this point in the season and the way things are going with a lot of other things to talk about in college football, I was kind of surprised to be this morning watching Get Up and hear Paul Finebaum, well-respected journalist, and former Heisman Trophy winner and Super Bowl champion Desmond Howard both weigh in on a comment that, and a lot of times has been made by many a coach in its own way. That's what kind of surprised me the most, is that it kind of picked up some national traction with a show such as that. Were you kind of surprised by that, or is it something that? No,
not really, because I know how this game works, where they're looking for content and something to do, and Billy and Florida is a hot topic right now, especially, since Finebaum was just here, and what they saw was like what a million other people saw. I guarantee you they saw that one clip that ended with him saying, some guy in Central Florida basement. They didn't see the next sentence.
Right.
Where he put it, which really added context to the whole thing. So if that's all you see, you're going to think, wow, yeah, he's just down there ripping these people. Right. Like a few years ago, when there was a guy, Dabo Sweeney had some guy called into his radio or TV show, and it was like Jesse from Spartanburg. I'm Jesse from Spartanburg, and I think you don't know what you're doing. And Dabo sort of let into him, and so Jesse from Spartanburg became like everybody's hero who in the anti Dabo thing. And because Dabo's he's no longer the golden boy there, and so this Billy from Spartanburg gained this whole sort of narrative that anybody who criticizes them, they just live in their parents' basements and they're the losers and they have no validity, and so that's what I think Finebaum and others said, and I just call it's the media outrage. Well, it's basically just a social media outrage machine. Right. That's what it is. And it's like the game we used to play, telephone. You tell somebody something, and it goes around the circle. By the time it gets back to the first one, it's a totally different story almost than what it started as.
It's kind of like, I got a 12-year-old, right? So it's kind of like talking to a young kid, like you're just you're going to get a version of it, right? You're going to get something that's close to the truth or whatever, and you have to kind of discern like what's what, right? So it really feels like that,
right? If you're not really that emotionally invested in it, and as an adult, you can take a step back and weigh the situation and have to take a deep breath. That's not where we are with fans. And again, I don't blame them. I'd be spitting fire too. And then you get this, you're like a raging bull, and then you have this red flag, red cape waved into your face. That hey, look what now he thinks you're just some social media misfit living in a basement in Central Florida.
Well, it was passive aggressive, right? It was like I'm joking, but I'm not joking, right? Like
I don't even think he meant it as a joke. I think he just because I think the only joke he half made in that whole thing was when he mentioned about his first start, and he said, and I got a concussion there. In my first thing, and he sort of smiled about it and laughed as if, I was not silly.
Against William and Mary. As a redshirt freshman.
Yeah. I think, now he really wants to bang his head against the wall after that.
So now, I will agree with Finebaum on one thing, and then we're done. And if you talk about basements in Florida, we all know that we're basically below sea level here in Florida and all that. And one of the biggest shocks for myself being in Ohio when everybody's got a basement, is that we don't have a basement. That's why I'm doing the show from my office instead of my basement. But Finebaum did talk about understanding the geography and Billy Napier not understanding. And obviously he meant it because obviously there's no basements in Florida. But in your estimation, David, in your opinion, does he understand? Has Billy gotten to the point, like you heard Coach Spurrier say today, and this has nothing to do with Coach Spurrier coming back as the interim coach or that, but what you're doing is not working. So you got to do something different. We are now in year 3, and in my opinion, observing practice, observing the way that this program operates, observing the way that the head kind of handles himself around different people. Does he understand where he is and what this job entails? Urban Meyer so eloquently put it even on the Saturdays in the South documentary, where he went around and to the frat houses and sorority houses, and they're asking like X and O questions. And he was like, boy, this is, and that was before social media was big and things like that. Has Coach Napier really grasped what this program means to the people of the Gainesville areas and others and the state of Florida as a whole? Or is it just, has he really grabbed onto that?
Yeah, I don't know if he did at first. I don't know if he could at first because, he had no Gainesville experience. He had worked as an assistant in Alabama. I think he understands how much these programs mean to their states. And so he can relate to that. But still, until you go through that first season and you go out and press a ton of flesh and stuff like that, which he did. So I think he understands what it means now. I think he still has that that same belief in himself that he's had from day one. I think a lot of it is probably misplaced belief at this point. That the confidence that he had, that he I think if he goes back, he realized he had a lot to learn and still is learning. And I think he addressed these. He hadn't done, as they say, insanity is doing the same thing over and over. I think he felt that he had addressed the problems sufficiently in the off season, so he wasn't doing the same thing over and over. I mean, I think he was too slow to move on these things, but he has moved on them. But he hadn't addressed them enough, obviously, to do it. And by the time he realized that, I think he realizes it now. But what do you do? And of course, we're talking like it's what Saturday was the ultimate verdict on this season. Now, it is a very damning first look at it, no doubt about it. But things come. I don't think they're as bad as they looked. I don't think that they're nearly as good as people had hoped, though.
Right. I think that the issue too, and for me is, and I think a lot of people is, we still don't know how good Miami is. Could they be a college football playoff team? Could be. But when you look at Miami's history, and based upon the fact that what you have down the road after this, basically what could be just an elixir in a temporary elixir in Sanford, you're staring down the barrel at some teams that a lot of people would guess that they had to bet their last ham sandwich are better than Miami.
Don't eat the ham.
So then, you look at that kind of thing, and I think that's where it comes from is not only were they bad against Miami, but then that could lead to, situations down the road where, like Brendan and I looked at, they've got some we looked at some tape. We spent an hour looking at a couple plays.
You want to see it? We can see that now.
We could throw it up there. And we'll start there. But I do want to say this, and I think one of the things that we look on, and these are going to be two offensive plays that we're going to take a look at, but more or less, they still gave up 500 yards to a team that we don't really know how good they are. Now, we'll give Miami this and Mario Cristobal this. He did kind of change. They had Josh Gaddis, and then they moved on from Josh Gaddis, who was more, that's who Cristobal knew from his days at Alabama. And then they moved to Shannon Dawson, who's more from the Mike Leach air raid system. So they did change, the philosophy there. We could kind of get to that. And I think this may lead us in that direction. So we're going to look at a couple clips. And this is after the interception. It's great to see the defense.
No, this is the I think this is
the interception, right?
Yeah,
so then we're going to watch the stanza after the interception.
Yeah. So you can talk us through it, Lauren.
Yeah. So basically,
get is your video, Brendan?
A real flush, yes. And then we get Shamar James with a great pick in front of Xavier Restrepo. Everybody's good to go. So now you got an opportunity here, okay? And this is, when we talk about these things, this is where we're talking about, because you throw it out there and they basically boat raced, and Eugene Wilson has to make the one guy miss, doesn't. They kind of get whipped, and then it's just everybody comes off. But you look at them rallying to the football. So now, second down, now it's second down. Mertz gets flushed, makes a nice play, and there you go. Now, a lot of people were like, why are you signaling first down? You're down in the game, but it's still a football game at this time. We got to stop being so critical of everything these guys do, okay? First down, gets flushed. Now, this is where we talked about. And we throw what this ends up being is an out and up to Khalil Jackson. Now, before that, and in that route, you had a guy in the flat, back in the flat. Maurice Burke goes in motion, comes back, which creates like a flood concept. You see Marcus Burke there. And then you have Khalil Jackson on the out and up, which basically is the clear route of the flood. Now, if Mertz, and I don't know what Mertz saw, but he's basically got single coverage on Marcus Burke, who's bigger than the defensive back. If you put that on him, it's probably a first down and you live to fight another day, but you got to put it on him. Instead, Mertz throws the out and up. And if look at all this space here, if he throws it to the inside, kind of puts a little air on it and gives Khalil Jackson a little time. I mean, that ball was thrown about 2 feet from the sideline, which means that really Khalil Jackson didn't give his quarterback. We used to talk about in receiver play, staying off the quarterback's grass. That's that about 8 yards from wherever the numbers are, in between the numbers in college, because the numbers are a little closer to the sideline. He was on the quarterback's grass, number one. So we had that. And then Mertz didn't throw a great ball, giving Khalil a chance with the grass that he had, because he still had grass on the inside. So now we come to third down. Run it back, Brendan. So this is third down out of the bunch. So now basically same thing. You got the triangle, back in the flat. Badger on the sit down, which that isn't a great route because he basically is bracketed and kind of floats himself into the defender. But now it's basically everybody's doing something they shouldn't be doing. So right now that ball should be out because at this point Mertz is not under duress, and you got the flat defender sitting on Badger with Malagoa bracketing him from the inside. So now the only throw he has is Boardingham, but watch Boardingham drift from the 10 to the 15. So now that makes that throw to the pylon when it should have been bent towards the sideline. And once again, if you throw it on the break, you put it right on him, and it's probably a first down. But instead, he sails it. And I mean, from the moment Mertz throws this kind of ball, because right now he's not really under duress if you threw it on the break and you got an incompletion. But if you look at the formation, you had 3 to the boundary versus 4 defenders into the boundary. So right now you're running basically out routes. And my thing is, I don't understand where Badger, you would much rather like to see Badger maybe come across and sit down in the middle of the field to hold Maliaga to give Mertz a better read on this flat defender. And then Boardingham, knowing that right there on the break, when he hits that safety, he needs to be putting that foot in the ground with his outside foot, not his inside foot, and driving right down the 10. And if he does that, they got a chance. Now, the problem is this. The Miami defender, number 25, really should have known, okay, I've got Maliaga there. I can actually sink a little bit, and he really could have covered both plays, which makes the play design bad because he could have covered both guys and probably picked it even if Mertz throws a good ball. So you have not only bad design, I'm not going to say bad, a design that is not favorable. I don't want to insult coaches like that. That's not favorable, as well as versus a defense that's not favorable because you were 4-on-3. So, when you look at those things, it's a wonder that Billy Napier is the primary play caller. But like I talked about the other day, and you can echo this, Mr. Whitley, I've always said that they have a Monday through Thursday problem, which means they sat there, they got on the grease board, and they said, okay, on 3rd and long, this is what we're calling. And we're going to call it into the boundary. And I need to know why that makes sense. And then as a former football guy myself, I don't know what the read is there other than they were reading that flat defender. But then you basically waste a receiver because Elijah Badger's route is literally a waste route when it's into the boundary. And the safety can basically use the goal line as a second defender in a lot of ways, and the sticks as well. So, I mean, it's just those things. So it's like, is it time to be, I know he can't change offensive coordinators now, but he talked about Russ Callaway coming along and things like that. Could the change be, let me step away, maybe for this Sanford game, give Russ Callaway the opportunity to take Lagway or take the guys and let him call maybe the first 15 to 20 plays and see how we're rolling.
It could be, but it won't be.
That's what we said. We went through the whole thing. We're like, but it doesn't matter because it's not going to change.
And especially because of having Lagway in there. I think that'll more or less solidify his need to think I got to babysit this guy, even more so than normal, as opposed to Mertz. I have confidence in him. let he and Russ wing it and just see what happens. And to whether Russ Callaway, Russ Callaway, he could be Mike Leach Jr., but I don't think Billy's going to trust him and going to turn it over to anybody. Is the thing. I think it would be great, or would have been good, I think, had he just said, in theory, what Texas A&M did with Bobby Petrino, or what in theory Arkansas did with Petrino this year, saying, all right, here you run the offense, bring in somebody like that, the guy
Miami's doing with Shannon Dawson. Yeah.
Everybody said, the proof was in the pudding Saturday. I mean, the guy, they had it figured out, and he was making the right play calls, and in that, and the thing about the sequence you showed, it just looked like a team that had been practicing maybe 1 week.
Exactly.
Where the coaching wasn't good, and the concept wasn't good. B, the execution was bad. Like you said, guys were making the sharp cuts that they need to make. The receivers were just drifting where they shouldn't be. I mean, like, hello, Billy Gonzalez, where are you?
Yeah.
Right.
That was my
and Mertz was not making good reads.
Right.
And that's the progression that we sort of went through, Lauren. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I mean,
no, but go ahead.
That's exactly sort of what we talked about, and that sort of came to the same sort of conclusions along the way here. Is that like we're is there rhyme or reason to what we're doing? It just feels like he coaches it to a system that he believes in less than doing things like Urban Meyer would talk about, or all these other coaches, is that he coaches to the personnel on the field. We saw that last year a little bit when, and Max Brown came in, a little different triple threat quarterback. We've seen him, coach a guy like AR, who's been sort of vocal and professionally about not being exactly, fitted to his talents. I think that Billy's got an opportunity this week with Lagway, to show that he can. I don't think he will, but I mean, is there a different scheme? Is there a different strategy with this different kind of quarterback? Although he's also young, what do you guys think? What is he really capable of? And let's take. Let me remind you that McNeese State last year they didn't score a touchdown. So no, this team is if anything as a parallel with the team last year as far as how good they are, if not hopefully not worse. But what do you guys think about, supposedly a softball team going in this week with Sanford? It really isn't. There really are no softball teams, I guess, in my opinion.
Well, if we don't play better defense, it may not be any softball teams.
The defense is really bad.
Yeah. And we're going to get to that. But I would say this, and this is the coach in me. If I had a guy like Lagway, it would be eye candy.
All day.
Him downhill. Eye candy. Spring it out to Wilson. Eye candy. Throw a slant. It would be, people talk about the shifts in motion. I would shift in motion to death. And at some point in time, it would be DJ Lagway coming downhill, getting on the edge and making it happen. And then every so often, I would get the formation to my liking, as our good friend Shane Matthews has said, and I would take a receiver who is not nearly against a defensive back who would never be recruited by Florida, and I would give DJ a him throw. You throw it to him, and you give that guy a chance, and we go from there. And before we get to you, David, we want to talk about our sponsors, Meldon Law, the only official law firm of the Florida Gators. Meldon Law, we won't back down. And hopefully Jeffrey gets to play with the band sooner or later. But Meldon Law, they won't back down. The floor is yours, Mr. Whitley.
I was with Meldon Law. I heard that Jeff got a lot of calls from Gator fans yesterday wanting to sue UF for false advertising.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah, well, you bought a Meldon Law. I said, "Oh, here's an easy segue."
That's why you're who you are.
He's like Columbo.
Oh yeah,
that's what I love about it. He's the smartest guy in the room. You just
I've got that raincoat in here somewhere.
But David, what do you think as Lagway could possibly be the starter?
Yeah, I think the schedule is, it couldn't have worked. Everybody talks about Florida's schedule, but this is one time where the schedule, could not have. If you want to play Samford, this was the week you had to play Samford, because were they playing anybody else on the schedule coming up, I would think even UCF, I don't think they would win. Because Lagway, for all we know about him, he's not ready for a Power 5 or Power 4 now defense to come in and do all the confusing stuff that they're going to do. But you give him 50 snaps against Samford, he's going to make rookie mistakes, but you figure that the rookie mistakes won't cost him against Samford, because they've got to put his maturation process suddenly it's got to be expedited, I think, and get him going. And I would say, assuming, unless he goes out there and lays an egg, but I don't think he will, because he looked okay Saturday. I mean, it was garbage time and all that, but I mean, you could see the guy just exudes talent. He just got to figure the game out. Right. You got to, if they can just speed up that figure it out process enough to, all right. So then comes Texas A&M. I think unless he just bombs against Samford, and I don't think he will, then I think you keep starting him, and just because I think at this point, and I didn't think I'd be right, unless things just blew up, and they did blow up Saturday, because I never thought we'd be thinking, Mertz needs to be replaced in game 2, in game 3. I think the injury is the concussion is unfortunate, is a blessing in disguise, because it gives Billy the excuse to go ahead and basically make this change. He has to make the change just for medical reasons right now, but he doesn't look like he's stabbing Mertz in the back by doing it.
So you think, I mean, here today, you think that, see, I'm not one that thinks that the change should be or will be made. You would be of the ilk that you think it's time to make a change.
Well, I think we found out, what Mertz is, and a good leader, film room savant, works hard, and I think we were discussing about this yesterday. I think surrounded by the right people and the right offense, he could quarterback you to a championship, I think, but he's not surrounded by that. He doesn't have the right people in this situation. And it's almost like, well, it's a Hail Mary time already. Pretty much, because you're going to you've hit your Mertz's ceiling, and we saw it last year. And I thought, he was really disappointed. I mean, it was certainly not all on him. It was the scheme, it was the protection, it was the receivers, but he was part of the problem. Right. And for a 6-year player, I just find that almost it just doesn't make sense.
Right. And I mean, you think about it. You think about a 6-year player should know to throw the post to grass on he shouldn't have to be taught those things, like you said, in his 6th year. And I think you can look at it both ways, and that's great. You appreciate that, is because there's so many ways of looking at this thing, because you don't know what's going on. There is no way to know. I mean, I don't think they helped Graham Mertz at all on Saturday. Obviously, they couldn't run the ball, but I think they kind of gave up on the running game a little too early in some ways. But then you look, it's like 3rd and 5, and they run the ball, and don't give Mertz a chance to throw, which we could all agree he's pretty good at 3rd and 5. He's not great 3rd and 12, but 3rd and 5, he's pretty good. But I think a lot's been made about the offense, and we want to bring Rob Brown in. Is Rob ready to go? Rob.
He's logging in still.
Okay. But because as we talk about the defense and his familiarity with Ron Roberts, as Brendan and I were breaking down the film and things like that, we kind of went to the fact, well, okay, the offense wasn't great. But even if the offense was great, they would have had to score 50. And David, we could say that Graham Mertz would have played. Let's say Graham Mertz throws for 240 and 3 touchdowns, right? And then Montrell Johnson runs for another and they kick a field goal. I don't think 30 points would have been enough. Mm-hmm. I don't think 31 points would have been enough on Saturday, because after 500 yards given up by the defense, I think they would have had to score 50. So I think Florida would have lost that game 50-30, and they're ahead of schedule of the historically poor pace that they were on last year. Florida's been playing football since 1906. So, I mean, that where they played like 5 games and they're still, I mean, it's at that point. So, I mean, what is it that's going, I mean, what is the defense? I mean, I was in on the additions, Asa Turner and all those things, but Asa Turner is not a man cover guy. He's a come downhill and strike you guy. You know, he's the guy that keeps that run from being, 10 yards. He keeps it at 3 or what have you. And it just seems like, once again, the disconnection, the linebackers are dropping into space and no one's home. They're not finding work. They're not looking. Mark Snyder, I heard him, and this was, one day I was at Ohio State practice back when Jim Tressel, and I don't know if you guys know, Mark Snyder was the head coach at Marshall, but he was the linebacker coach, and he was coaching Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman. And he was consistently yelling at Marcus, "Fine work, Marcus, fine work." And what that meant was Marcus was taking his drop and kind of sitting there instead of seeing guys and understanding the concept and latching onto a guy and then going and kind of in his zone, recognizing where guys were. And it seems like we're doing the same thing. And that lent itself to some big third down conversions, which then led to points for Miami.
Yeah. We've seen this movie before, like 6 or 7 times. But you thought it was a new film, it was supposed to be. And I'm with you. I thought that they made the right additions or some of them in the secondary to do it. And I thought there'd be certainly more of a Ron Roberts impact than we saw, but they did look discombobulated. And Shamar James, he said as much. He said, we had bad communication out there on some plays. He said there was a lot of this looking around, and that gets back to what have you guys been doing for? And even worse, Billy said, we've been working on Miami for months. It wasn't like they just played Ole Miss, and now you got to reboot. And they knew, and it's not like they're working on a new Miami team. It has changed offensively somewhat, but this isn't a new staff. We had no clue what it might do, but they were still just like, huh? What's going on? And scheme and the secondary was surprised. I tell you what wasn't really surprised though was that defensive line just getting 0 push.
Yeah, and I think we thought they couldn't be worse, and they were just as bad. And here's another point, and then I'll swing it to Rob is, okay, so, and I'll just throw I know when Hal Mummy was at Kentucky with the air raid and Mike Leach, it's only about 2 or 3 run plays and about 4 or 5 to 10. It's like 15 plays on a chalkboard is the air raid. It's not this sophisticated whole kind of deal. It's like you literally hand them the game plan on a piece of notebook paper and there it goes. And it's just about execution, timing, and those kind of things. So if you talk about working on Miami for months, 15 plays on the chalkboard, you're talking, we haven't even got to, like you said, the UCF with the tempo and just the different ways to hit you. And same thing with coming down the road here in a few months with, Jeff Lebby at Ole Miss. Mm-hmm. You're going to see that in about a 4 to 5 week period. You're going to see Jeff Lebby, Josh Heupel, Gus Malzahn. Mm-hmm. And they'll put 21 on. Huh? It goes fast. And, we welcome in Rob Brown from SEC Sidelines. Rob, you were, we were kind of on the group chat during the game, and I think you were as shocked as anybody on what you saw from the Gators, in particular, your guy, God, I'm losing my mind.
Forget his name. Good, that's a good policy.
I bet, but
Ron Roberts.
Ron Roberts, and maybe it's a situation where maybe Ron Roberts starts to take more. We don't know what his role is really. I know he was down on the field calling defense. Austin Armstrong was up in the box, but he could just be relaying the signals, into the headset, things like that. But I know you were surprised, and just really explain to us what that shock was.
I don't know. Austin Armstrong, AKA Lumpy Rutherford. I don't, Larry Mondello. It was a disaster. And I feel like an analyst who recommended a stock at 25. And within 5 minutes of the opening bell on Wall Street, it was worth $10 a share. It ain't going to happen. I've seen this story before at other schools. Most recently, with arguably the worst hire in Auburn history, the potato head, Brian Harsin. If a dog will bite, he'll do it when he's a pup. Year 1 to year 2, if you don't make discernible progress, it's not going to happen. And if year 3, your first game, you're going backwards, falling down the stairs backwards, it's just not going to happen. Florida deserves better than this. I completely got it wrong. I don't have any paper bags. I had all plastic when I stopped by the grocery store on the way home today, but I would have cut out eye holes. And I'm ashamed because I picked the Gators to win that game, and I thought they would. Number one, I wanted them to win because they're an SEC team, and I just have a lot of respect for that program. But now no one there is going to fix it. I don't see Scott Strickland getting to make a third coaching hire, and the interim president won't do it. It's just Florida deserves better. I don't know if it's going to be, Lane Kiffin loves Oxford, but they need to get somebody good because they've got everything in the world. But here's a question I'll ask anybody on this panel. Do you think everybody out there truly appreciates and respects and understands the gravity of these rising programs at USF and UCF, and then on a lesser degree, FAU and FIU, and then Florida State and Miami? Because from 83 to 2013, that 30-year period, 11 national championships came out of the state of Florida. And Florida State, they got a lemon at quarterback. They'll be lucky to win 7 games this year, maybe 6, 7 games. They're riding around on 4 bald tires with no car insurance. They got problems. Miami looks good, but how good is Florida? And now with December signing period, you give Knoxville maybe. I don't look. It's hard to feel sorry for a coach when they make so much money, but I completely missed it. I thought things were better. If they would let reporters go to practice, there wouldn't be as much shock.
Well, I've been quiet this last couple of days for the most part, but I will say, and I'm not trying to say, I knew anything or whatever, but I just saw Utah a year ago, and I've been vocal since I was so. Lauren and I were so blown away with that game, and it just sort of stuck with me. And I kept thinking, I heard all of this last year before the first game. I heard a lot of this stuff. Billy came out and said, we're stronger, this much more stronger. We're lifting this much more weight. We built this much more muscle. Like we saw, there was like the same press conference this year. We're talking about RPMs. We're this much faster. Okay, great. But, we don't get to see any of that stuff. We don't really, we just kind of take your word for it. And so here we are. So it's like, as a media person, it's like, fool me once, but you're doing the same thing again. You really, really oversold yourself here.
Well, where was that 22, 23, 26 miles per hour when literally Cam Ward's first scramble of the game, he literally was jogging, looking around, and then I think he could have scored, David, and then he just said, well, I'll just go down now because I want to throw a touchdown pass for my first touchdown as a Miami Hurricane. I mean, it was the one, I'm talking about the one down Florida sideline. I mean, he literally was looking around. I'm like, well, he's going to score. And I'm like, what's he doing? And he just took a knee because he was like, well, I want to throw a touchdown pass first to a 9th-year tight end, by the way. 9 years.
9 times.
McCormick's been playing football for 9 years. But
he was around back when Florida was good almost.
Right. So back,
press, he was the running
back to the, back to the defense, I don't want to, I'm not going to knock Ron Roberts yet and teams get better and things like that. But I just think they have, and Mr. Whitley, you talk to people. Have you talked to anybody that's been at practice on a consistent basis that knows football and can speak to the tempo and tenor of the practices? Have you spoken to anybody? Do you have any sources that have any of that, or?
It's so hard because you can't even say so and so look good, so and so look bad. The tempo thing. It's just hard for people to. I've talked to people who said they look bad. Like
in practice,
like Lagway's through X number of interceptions and and that kind of stuff. But it is really hard to gauge, like when they go scrimmage, because we don't even see scrimmages. Plus, they're going against themselves, and it's just hard to see.
Well, that's a good point, by the way. How bad is the defense when the ones are going against the ones? You're not getting a lot of competition there.
Game looks, right.
Yeah, and another thing, all this talk about bigger, faster, stronger, they look slow out there against Miami. I mean, slow and not as big. I mean, supposedly they are. I mean, you go up next, but man, I mean, Miami's offensive line did look like the Great Wall revisited, and played like it. Because they weren't exactly holding back the North Atlantic Sea.
Right. And Rob, I want to ask you a question. I know you got a point to make too. They played a lot of guys on Saturday.
Yeah.
And Pup Howard, who graded out the highest, I think only played 30 of 70 snaps.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're talking about a guy who I think still hasn't missed a tackle in his whole college career and is probably their best defensive player at this point, but only played, less than half the snaps. Is that I mean, because Ron Roberts coaches the linebackers, is that his MO? Is that what you saw at Auburn? I know you said they didn't have a lot of talent, so maybe they didn't play a lot of guys, but from what Billy Napier kind of stated, it was like there were some competitions that were close, which led to the constant. Did I get that right, Mr. Whitley? That kind of led to some of the rotations and things. But I've never seen a left tackle pulled in the third series. Your left tackle's like your keys, your car keys. You never leave home without it. That's your American Express. You don't switch left tackles. But go ahead, Rob. I know you had a point to make.
No, I'll just say Ron Roberts last year had some good guys on the front seven, but somebody only rushed 2 against Alabama on 4th and 31. Now, that person's in the witness protection program. We're still trying to find out who it was. But when you have your best player on the field for less than half the snaps, it's a Monday through Friday problem. You've talked about it. David's talked about it. In the good old days when reporters went to practice and they knew the coaches, they were like, "Don't bullshit me. Don't try to bullshit me, coach. I know what's going on. I'm at practice every day." Right now, that's disrespectful to the media. I'm sick and tired of the media in sports getting lambasted and being treated like crap. We need sports information directors out there is what we need. And I really think it would make it would help if David Whitley could say to his readers, "Hey, I was at practice," because people are going to respect what David says. They're going to say, "I trust him." God, I remember talking to beat writers like Charles Hollis when I was a freshman in college at Auburn. He said, "You want to be a sports writer, huh?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Let me tell you what this life is like. 3 or 4 nights a week, staying at the Best Western or the Motel 6, eating a lot of food out of a paper sack." But boy, those guys, they really loved what they did. And when you sat around with these guys and heard their stories, it was priceless. We need to get back to that. And I'll tell you what doesn't work. Was it Billy Napier, Brendan, when you and I were at the media days, who said, "Oh, we lost 500 pounds and also gained 506 pounds of muscle"? I think they lost 506 pounds of muscle and gained 1,000 pounds of fat. And I don't know, number 21, I had 6 people watching the game with me Saturday going, "Who is 21 for Florida?" Come on, make some effort. But I'll tell you what doesn't work. My brother-in-law was in the Marine Corps 26 years, 7 combat tours. I mean, he speaks with credibility. And he said something to the effect that nowadays, I believe in basic training at Parris Island, if things are too rough and your drill instructor is raising his voice too much, you can pull a card and they have to back down. That does not work. And what doesn't work is not having the media, guys like Brendan, Buddy, David, Lauren, you, Franz, at practice. It's called accountability. There's nothing wrong with it. Florida deserves better, and nobody that's there right now is going to fix it. I think the Board of Trustees or your regents are going to have to come in and say, "All right, here's the deal." Okay? Out in Texas, Foghorn Leghorn, he's not the big booster. It's Foghorn Longhorn. Y'all, whoever your biggest boosters are, need to get together and go in there and just tell the president, the AD, how it's going to be done. That's what they do at Auburn. And they got Hugh Freeze. I don't know how good he's going to be, but I feel better. Florida should be better than this. They have everything in the world going for them. I keep saying that, and I was wrong. I wasn't drinking the Kool-Aid. I think I was just too optimistic. And, but also they were predicting a record hurricane season. We still got a long way to go.
So we're going to go to our sponsors, Titan MRI, Gainesville's newest MRI system. They got everything. They got the music. They make you feel comfortable. You can go there if you're claustrophobic. They have the bigger MRI machines with locations in Gainesville and Lake City, Titan MRI. So here we are. We got about 10 minutes left. We're looking at things. Maybe is what happens. What does the landscape look like? And you guys have been through it more than I have. I wasn't down here during I was here for the McElwain fiasco, but the Muschamps, the Zucker, I was here for Mullen, and it all works in different ways. But this is like like a death march. This is something that is going to be a weekly thing. And when does it happen? Somebody said he doesn't make it, to Knoxville. Somebody said he doesn't make it to the cocktail party. Others say, well, at the end of the season, because somebody brought up a good point. I don't know where I heard it. Who is the interim coach? If they do make a move, who do you peg to at least lead it through the end of the season?
Austin
David?
Armstrong.
Coach Roberts has just got here. Is it Mike Peterson? But we're not going to go there yet because I'm not sure that, as much as our listeners want the man and say it's done, but just what does how do we operate, those of us that love the team and cover the team? First speak, Mr. Whitley, as a reporter and a member of the media, how do you walk these next few weeks knowing that the inevitable could be around the corner?
It all, it's up to the circumstances. It would take, well, they're all must wins from now on, but I'm giving it that you're chalking up Saturday as a win. I think that's still fairly safe, although we can try to put 2021 out of your minds, but give them that. But I think it starts with Texas A&M. If they start 1-2, the math just doesn't work from there. There is one slight upturn, and that last 5 game killer now is like maybe a 4 game killer, because unless DJ the boys in Tallahassee somehow undergo some massive transformation here,
right?
But it's still a killer all the way through. But you can't. Billy's going to be the coach unless it just completely falls apart. Because as you said, what's the alternative, and what do you gain at that point unless they start 0-5 and look terrible doing it? I don't know, but they've got to. I say they can't start 0-4. If they lose to Central Florida, that might be enough of a revolt. Because Rob was mentioning, do they appreciate Central Florida and what it's done? There's always going to be the we're the big kahuna, you're Central Florida, pat them on the head thing. And people remember that 2021 Gasparilla Bowl where UCF won, but Florida writes that off as that was interim coach. Mullen was gone, program in disarray. UCF doesn't look at it that way. I'll tell you what, but if they come into the swamp and beat Florida in the swamp of regular season, that's bragging rights, baby. I don't know when they're playing them again.
And that's walking rights for Billy. I think that's where you really start to see
that might be it. Because you can always say, all right, at least they're losing to an SEC team. People say, oh God, that's terrible, but it's not just. And it'd be bad to lose to Vandy, although luckily for them, they don't play Vandy this year, apparently, based on what Vandy did. But to lose to at home UCF again in regular season would just that might be just enough of a I mean, the fans are, it's the French Revolution right now.
Oh yeah,
out there. That this would. What would be worse than I don't know what was worse than the French Revolution as far as overthrow, but whatever it was historically, that's what it would be from the fans if they lose to UCF.
Right. Now, Rob, as a fan, you speak to the fan. The eyes of the fan. We're week one. We're looking down the barrel of a gun, and like Mr. Whitley said, it's the French Revolution, and Robespierre and all those guys are wheeling out the guillotine and ready to go. As a fan, looking at it now, and a lot of people have already, it's over. But you got 11 weeks left, 11 weekends of football left. Now what?
You got to show a fight. I mean, that everybody always talks about week 1 to week 2. Well, we saw with FSU, they went backwards. And Florida, all hands on deck. If you go out there and squeak out a win against Samford, somebody's going to write a headline, Florida Gator football is kind of like the respirator's on, the priest is in the room, and they're calling the kinfolks to the bedside. You got to show progress. But you've got to have those boosters that'll come in and tell the president how it's going to be done. You got to have that. You can't have somebody making decisions who's messed up twice. You get one shot. So Florida, the roster, it's not like they don't have talent, but sometimes I think about these coaching staffs, and I think about the bar scene in the original Star Wars movie. It's like, wow, where'd they get these guys? And they're all making a lot of money, but they're not producing. I mean, again, we need to have – I'm just going to say this. I was in my basement this morning down here, and I was kidding. I mean, this is getting to be crazy.
No more basement. Yeah,
exactly. If I were Billy Napier, I mean, every president that I can remember in the United States of America, while he was alive, had a sit down or two with Reverend Billy Graham. Okay, you sit down with Buddy Martin. You don't have to, but it's a good idea, because when things get rough, the fans, when they're coming for you, like July 14th, 1789, at the storming of the Bastille, the French Revolution, they took out everybody.
I've been there.
They threw out the babies with the bathwater. You need Buddy, David, Franz, all these guys that y'all all know Gator football. Y'all know the fans, and y'all have awesome fans. That crowd, who the hell in their right mind, unless they're in love of school and love of program, would go sit in a 173-degree stadium in the wind chill? I mean, you've got everything you need. That's what drives. I'm talking with Alabama fans and Tennessee fans. They're going, how can Florida not get that right? And you know what? There's coaches out there that'll take that job, but y'all need to have a meeting, not in a boardroom, but at a round top table with no chairs. And in about 10 minutes, you get your powerful money people in there, and you'll fix this thing. No officers, no politics, all production. And I don't know who it's going to be, but man, if I was a coach, I'd crawl to Gainesville to take that job. That's just a fan's opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that and we started the program with that, Rob, is it just seems like there's a disconnect with how this thing should operate. Mm-hmm. And, I thought coming off of Dan Mullen, who many thought was, is great offensive mind,
yeah,
but was kind of dull, kind of stale. It had kind of lost its luster. And then came Billy Napier, who, we hear is this great recruiter, and we saw the numbers and things like that. But to me, a great recruiter, I look at a guy like Mac Brown. Mac Brown makes you feel welcome. He knows everybody. He's shaking hands, kissing babies. And in this day and age, particularly with some of the scrutiny, I really thought that Coach Napier would be more about glad handing and doing those things. And what's sad is, if this thing continues the way it's going, and I'm only talking from a blanket statement, the Florida people, the Florida community will have never known him. He will have come and gone, and they will have never known him. Dan would kind of speak through Megan Mullen. She was
Yeah.
the person of the people and things like that, and really embraced that thing. But it just, I mean, Mr. Whitley, it's almost like it's just it's that slow crawl. And I'm going to leave you guys with this as we kind of finish up, just for sake of giggles and something to maybe joke about. Over under, or here's the bet: who changes quarterbacks first, Florida or Florida State?
Well, I think Florida would, just because they have to. But if
I mean, out of
if you take that equation
I like
out of
David.
it, yeah, you take the concussion thing out of it. I think FSU would, because Mertz, people, Billy still believes in Mertz. And I mean, Mertz, I think, is still a proven commodity out there. I mean, poor DJ. I mean, that guy, I think his career peaked in 10th grade, and it's just been on a downward slide since then.
Well, with him, why would he come back to the ACC? It was a disaster the last time. But hey, man, I'm saying, hey, look, our Corvallis is just right for me. So I mean, it just left it alone.
You saw that pass last night, when he's overthrowing the guy wide open. I mean, holy cow, that just when you have the fans are chanting, "Give me," like that. Florida isn't that bad off yet, and
right.
I bet the coaches were probably chanting it too up in the press box.
Rob, what do you think?
I think Corvallis, Oregon has three things going for it. It's where they filmed Animal House. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was filmed right outside of there. And number three, all the Freddy Krueger movies were filmed out there. Other than that, it's a nice place to be. But I think Florida has a better quarterback. DJ, I mean, again, I say it a lot. If a dog will bite, he'll do it when he's a pup. He was 3 years at Clemson, 1 year at Oregon State, and at Florida State. I watched Mike Norvell get more. He'd get 50 pounds out of a 15-pound sack. That's what he could do, and he's not going to be able to do that with DJ Uglia. That crowd last night at Florida State. I mean, a lot of them were disguised as empty seats. That's not a good. That's what'll get the attention of the athletic director. But Norvell's a great coach. They don't have a quarterback. Florida. Then you look at the line of scrimmage. I mean, I don't know. I know one thing. Co-coordinators, it usually doesn't work. You think Gordon Ramsay's going to let anyone else in his kitchen? Come on.
Yeah.
Well, you hear all sorts of things, what's true, what's not. I've heard, Billy did try to get a couple guys, or several people told me that, early on, didn't work out. I think you got to question. I don't know if I'm an OC or if I'm going to be hired as an OC. If I want to work for somebody that's looking over me as much, I know he's the head coach. I think I want a little bit of, so you are the offensive coordinators. You want a little bit of freedom to do and install with the things that you want to some degree within the parameters that the head coach gives you. But, I don't know. I just feel like we're sort of past all of that, like you said today, Lauren. And really, I think right now you got to look in as like, how are you going to win? If you're a Gator fan, you got to strap in for a really long season, but you got to be hopeful that DJ Lagway is like the greatest, freshman quarterback in the history of time that's going to come in and go through this gauntlet and deal with all these things and not get hurt and everything else. I think we're all a little afraid to start talking about, well, what happens if he goes down? What are we looking at now? How long is Mertz going to be out? Like, all these things are really in question. So I think right now the focus should be like, how do you go beat Sanford?
Yeah. I mean, I think you got to see just something that, around 10 o'clock on Saturday night, people can, just, okay. I mean, that's one. And maybe we get better for Texas A&M. And you could say, for those of us that still think Graham Mertz is halfway decent, say, well, we get Mertz back, and, Texas A&M is they've got their struggles offensively as well. So, maybe we like, maybe you get that one and you 2-1, and now you're kind of looking ahead and you think, okay, maybe we could steal one. But I mean, I think that's just where things are now. And I think we got to, sooner or later, and that's what I like about Tuesday, because that's kind of when teams start to put the previous week to bed. We got to move from Cam Ward and Miami and kind of work and just go week to week with this thing, but
Bloody
it's like
Tuesdays, man.
It's
Bloody
like
Tuesdays.
it's like an injury report. It's day to day and it's week to week. And as we get ready to finish up, we got to tell you about our sponsor, Rinstar Medical Research, serving Marion County and surrounding areas with services such as help with memory loss and proven clinical research trials, Alzheimer's disease, Alzheimer's prevention, COPD, type 2 diabetes, Parkinson's disease, and other issues. Rinstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's questions for the answers of today. So as we finish up, guys, Mr. Whitley, what you got brewing this week?
Well, I do have one note of trivia that relates to our hot topic tonight. I checked Realtor.com, and there are actually 55 houses currently on sale in Orlando that have basements. So,
oh wow,
55, huh? All of 55. That's
right. Those are just the ones on sale, though. So,
okay,
yeah.
All right.
So
I might check that out.
23 of them are fish tanks.
I almost moved to Orlando when we first moved down here, so maybe I should have looked into that. Because
I lived in Orlando. We didn't have a basement.
Yeah,
I grew up in Colorado. I think everyone just lives in basements there.
Yeah, in Ohio, the same thing. Everything's done in the basement. But what you got? What are we writing this week?
I'm writing how got to go away and fix him until he proves he can't do the job. Then bring back Mertz in. So,
and Rob, who you got tomorrow?
We got Jason Caldwell, Auburn Undercover, talking about the Cal game in Auburn Saturday. Jake Wimberly, Jackson, Mississippi, going to be talking about Mississippi State and Ole Miss. Dudley Dawson, Hogville.net, Vince Ferrara from Knoxville. And we always do. We'll cover all 16 of those guys on the map behind me. There's a lot of stories there, but I think Florida probably is the biggest story right now because it's one of the greatest jobs out there.
You got Rob Brown, SEC Sidelines with Brendan Martin. You can read David Whitley in the Gainesville Sun. I'm your host, Lauren Meadows with GatorBaitMedia.com. This was Tell It Like It Is Tuesday. I don't know.
Taco Tuesday.
Taco Tell It Like It Is Tuesday.
Basement
we'll work
Tuesday.
on that.
Basement Tuesday. Tacos in your basement Tuesday.
Thanks for joining us on the Buddy Martin Show. Great job tonight, guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, sorry I was late.
Good show.